New attacks. Our federal president is keeping a lower profile this time. And yes, there are death threats against Social Democratic Party politicians, and you'll never guess who they're from. But I can tell you one thing in advance. The paramilitaries that were previously supported should urgently be kept under control. There was an accident in the energy supply in Rhineland-Palatinate. Of course, it was not a terrorist attack. I want to make that clear again here. That was the very first thing they clarified, even before they had properly started the investigation.
However, according to the investigators, the initial investigations did not reveal any indications of a politically motivated act or sabotage.
Criminals apparently wanted to dig a hole to steal fuel and then take something from it. That's a perfect transition for now, because before we get to the next Social Democratic Party scandal, let's move on to the next topic, which is really something else. In any case, this thing in Rhineland-Palatinate, I can hardly believe it, but our federal president is keeping a low profile, and what the press is making of it, well...
Listen for yourselves. He now openly supports keeping the so-called firewall. In Die Zeit, he cautioned against empowering extremists.
Why is the Social Democratic Party in the government? Why does the Social Democratic Party provide a federal president? I thought extremists shouldn't be given any power. Wait, by the way, I can prove that. It's coming up in the next article. I just wanted to mention it again really quickly, but please help out, just briefly. Why is the Social Democratic Party governing if extremists shouldn't be given any power? And what conclusions they're drawing now? I'm telling you, you couldn't make this up anymore. By the way, if you support free press and think the public broadcasters are lying to you, then support this channel. Personally, I would be really happy if you could help this channel grow again with a like and a subscription. YouTube apparently has it in for me and doesn't want me to share my topics with you. Thank you so much.
Such an attempt has historically failed, not only in the Weimar Republic. However, Steinmeier remained cautious regarding a possible ban procedure against the alternative for Germany. However, the head of state criticized what he saw as the overly tactical approach to this issue by the established political parties.
No more party bans? What's going on with him? Does he have something? Somehow he's realized that this whole thing isn't feasible. By the way, there were also two side incidents. In North Rhine-Westphalia, there was another armed kidnapping. The perpetrator is currently being sought. And the Minister of Economic Affairs of Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania crashed his car into a tree during a live conference. I'll probably see that in the news tomorrow morning. There's still too little known to say more about it. But let's move on to the next top topic, and actually this is a perfect transition, especially when it comes to the Weimar Republic. Of course, you know the story, I don't need to pretend otherwise. And we also know what the National Socialists did with paramilitaries back then. The problem for the Social Democratic Party now is just the paramilitaries, which they previously supported, for example, with protest funds. They are now turning against their own party. And I really have to say, even though it's not proper, somehow it does make the whole thing a bit macabre.
The Thuringian Social Democratic Party District Administrator Matthias Jendreich was the first in Germany to introduce mandatory work for citizens' benefit recipients under the age of 25 in the picturesque town of Nordhausen. Anyone who doesn't show up for the €1 jobs simply gets woken up by an enforcement officer.
No more party ban. What's going on with him? Has he realized that this whole thing can't be implemented? By the way, there were also two side incidents. In North Rhine-Westphalia, there was another armed kidnapping. The perpetrator is currently being sought. And the Minister of Economic Affairs of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern crashed his car into a tree during a live conference. I'll probably see that in the news tomorrow morning. Not much else to say, as little is known so far. Let's move on to the next top topic. And actually, this is a perfect transition, especially when it comes to the Weimar Republic. Of course, you know the story, I don't need to pretend otherwise. And we also know what the National Socialists did with paramilitaries back then. The problem for the Social Democratic Party now is that the paramilitaries, which they previously supported with, for example, protest funds, are now turning against their own party. And I really have to say, even though it's not proper, it does make the whole thing a bit macabre.
This work obligation has been in effect since November, and now the Social Democrat is receiving death threats because of it.
Who could be so mentally deficient as to send threats to this person? Finally, there's someone actually doing something. He has definitely gotten hundreds of people into work. He has definitely shown hundreds of people the way. How they can participate in financial life here in Germany, how they can work 6 to 8 hours. Who, please, would want to do anything bad to this man?
On the first death threat, the word Antifa was written on the envelope. In the meantime, the police and state security are investigating who is behind the threats.
I am absolutely shocked. I am absolutely shocked. They actually pay Antifa to destroy opposition parties here in Germany. And then they just turn against him. I just can't believe it. Didn't they make any deals with these paramilitaries beforehand? Like, even if you have to work later, you can still go on strike, you'll still get your strike pay and everything. Yeah, but what does that look like? I mean, you really have to leave BD completely alone. Did they not grant them this clause? And now I want to briefly go back to the other two topics. Of course, the first thing with the fuel line definitely wasn't done by some total idiots who just dig a hole and tap into a line. Yeah, even though there are actually much easier ways, but okay, robbing a gas station or something like that is much, much simpler and easier. Or even a federal president who has always advocated for it to charter buses in order to bring anti-fascists right to the base of the alternative for Germany. It's pretty stupid when your own supporters turn against you, don't you think, right?
I mean, we go to work, so they should work too, and he's working as well. Whether it's right or wrong is another matter.
There are 64 citizens benefit recipients in the work project. 25 of them were sanctioned because they repeatedly skip work without an excuse. For 6 people, the benefits were completely cut.
They only have 3 young people per community. The welfare recipients are real, they're doing really well, aren't they? So, the unemployment rate back there must be almost 0. That's what it seems like to me. Because otherwise, a lot more people would have been put to work. And I thought, back there in the east, in Thuringia, don't feel attacked if you live in Thuringia now. But I thought the unemployment rate back there was so high, that's what we think here in the East, because that's what we're told, that the East in Thuringia, that some of them aren't all there. Although I still believe that the people from Thuringia are one of the best communities back there. When I look at the solidarity among the people there, I have to say I would like to have that here in the West too, but well, just saying. But hey, don't you think 3, maybe 4 unemployed people per community that he got into work? Could we define that a bit more precisely? And did you maybe just go ahead and simply assign German youths and accidentally picked one of the anti ones? Could that be the case? Didn't you do your job that well? That's just so brainless, bringing something like that up again in Rhineland-Palatinate right before the elections. Because right now there's an absolute neck-and-neck race going on there. And by the way, I have to say the Christian Democratic Union is slightly ahead of the Social Democratic Party. The Greens have lost a bit, and the Alternative for Germany is quite stable there. And there will probably really be a neck-and-neck race. Exactly, that's something you don't want to mess up now. That's why these messages were leaked again very briefly.